is recorded. And let's see. Before we begin, I just also want to give you a heads up. We have a few more webinars coming up next week, Tuesday, No Frustration Irrigation, and that's from 1 to 2. So we aren't really going into irrigation today. This would be your webinar for you to learn more about doing a self-irrigation audit, learning how to convert from overhead spray to drip, and really figuring out what is the best type of irrigation system for your garden project. The following Thursday, October 8th, we'll be doing laundry to landscape, where we can learn how you can recycle your laundry water to irrigate your landscape. And then finally, for folks who have a container gardener, who are interested in container gardening, we have big gardens in small spaces, and that's going to be a lot of fun on Thursday, October 15th. You can register for all of these webinars at ebmud.com/watersmart. So we just wanted to do a quick poll on if you attended our last webinar last week called Getting Started with Water-Wise Gardening, if you could just answer yes or no. Oh, interesting. We're about half and half. So welcome back, those who are kind of following this webinar series, and for those who are new, welcome. So I'd like to introduce our speakers. Jessica Woodard is a water conservation representative from East Bay Mud. She has her master's degree in resource management and environmental planning. She focused her thesis work on how neighbors can influence each other in converting from to a low water use garden. So she's going to talk to us more about that. We're joined here with Anne-Marie Benz from the California Native Plant Society. She's a horticultural outreach manager. Before coming to CNPS, she worked as the executive director for Rescape California. Anne-Marie has spent many years working with home gardeners and professional landscapers on sustainable landscape practices. So thank you, Anne-Marie, for joining us. So what we're going to cover today is why plant choice matters. Then we're going to dive into specifically the benefits of working with California native plants. We're going to review some installation and design considerations, and then provide some resources for you to find the right plants for your garden. We're also going to cover EB Mud landscape rebates. And with that, I'd like to send it over to Jessica to kick us off.
I'm just going to turn off my video to help make this go smoother. Thank you, Kristen. I really love plants, and I'm excited to be giving this presentation, because one of the best parts of my job at EB Mud is seeing new gardeners get animated about their favorite plants. So I hope this webinar gives you the tools and inspiration you need to get started. I'm going to start off with giving you the big picture on why our plant choices matter. Many of you attended last week's webinar on water-wise gardening, so I will keep this section short. EB Mud water comes straight from the McCalmy River watershed in the Sierra Nevadas. This pristine watershed is home to a complex ecosystem, and when we conserve water here, we're really leaving more water for fish and wildlife. Chinook salmon, for example, depend on cold water releases from EB Mud's reservoir during their salmon run. And thanks to continued conservation in the Bay Area, in combination with monitoring and habitat restoration, we've seen record-breaking returns of salmon in recent years. Most people think of water conservation as it relates to the length of your teenager or housemate hogging the shower, but actually our irrigation is usually the biggest driver of water use. Think of how long we typically run an irrigation zone, usually about 20 minutes. For a small lawn or garden with 10 sprinkler heads, that's the equivalent of 10 20-minute showers in your garden every day. This map, next slide. This map of the East Bay shows the variation of average daily water use across our residential sector. Even including our dense urban centers that have little to no yards, nearly 40% of total EB-MUD residential water use goes towards landscaping. As you can see, average daily water use increases with temperature and climate, and in hotter, drier regions with larger lots, nearly 70% of a household's water use is likely going outside, and that area is represented in red. Shoot, sorry, my battery just said it's low. So most people think part of the reason so much water is going outside is because of a historical preference for English or East Coast style gardens that aren't very well suited for our summer dry climate. They demand a lot of water to keep looking good. This is a national and global issue and not limited to California. Lawns cover more acreage in our country than corn, the largest food crop. And studies also show that globally, 70% of urban water demand is for irrigation because of this mismatched preference for thirsty landscapes. This next picture shows the same lawn or garden, but it's now converted to a mostly native water-wise garden. In contrast, it is using a fraction of its former water demand. 1,000 square feet of lawn can require 30,000 gallons of water a year, compared to less than 10,000 gallons a year for a low water use garden. Furthermore, a properly cared for native garden can use even less, and Anne-Marie is going to discuss that shortly. I wanted to take a step further and show you reasons why your plant choice make a difference beyond the border. What we plant in front of our yards can inspire similar choices in neighborhoods and become the new normal in our communities. Studies have shown a spillover effect or multiplier effect. When one household converts a front lawn to a low water use garden, other households on the same street are 5 to 7 times more likely to do the same thing, with or without a rebate. During the last drought, so many people converted their lawns in the East Bay that we saw a big shift in positive perception towards water-wise gardening. This is a survey question we asked because aesthetic preferences really matter. They can be a barrier or driver to your garden choice. And you can see in 2014, between 2014, which was kind of at the beginning of the drought, and 2017, we saw a large increase in positive perception of lawn and a decrease in negative perceptions of water-wise gardens. The next slide shows a typical front yard for some friends of mine who rented a place in El Cerrito a few years ago. With permission from their landlord, they added mulch and native plants in the fall. And then the next spring, after the winter rains, without much additional watering, their front garden looked like this. Neighbors started coming around and asking for cuttings and tips on what to plant. All of this is just to show when we go from lawn to a water conserving landscape, we're not just saving water on a site, we're possibly inspiring others to do the same. There's a lot going on in the world that may feel out of our control right now, but our local landscape is an area where we can make a positive impact. And circling back to plant choices and why the plants which we choose matter, not all water-saving landscapes save the same amount of water or provide the same level of benefits. Here is another landscape that was converted from lawn to drought-tolerant landscaping during the drought. The rock mulch here, unfortunately, heats up the soil, worsening its ability to hold water and nutrients. And the plants are minimal and don't support the same amount of local birds or insects as some other choices might. But a few years later, these residents decided to build up the soil with mulch and planted native penstemon, salvia, yarrows, and clarkia throughout the late fall and winter, taking advantage of the rain. And even though this photo is just right after they planted, you can already see some color and texture coming in. And the best part is by taking advantage of winter rains and using native plants adapted to our condition, this renovated landscape is probably saving the same amount of water compared to the one before and compared to a lawn, if not more. In the next section of this presentation, Anne-Marie is going to go into why you might want to choose California native plants as a starting point.
California native plants are, I'm with the California Native Plant Society, so we're huge fans. But you know, what is a native and why should you choose them, and how do you choose the right one? So a California native plant is the plant that was here before we started bringing things in and changing things around. It is the plant that is adapted to the conditions there, to the native soils, to the rain patterns, to the microbes, animals, everything that goes on around it. And it gives to them and they give to it. And it's the foundation of really good biodiversity and of our native ecosystem. California, it's easy to think of ourselves as very English garden style, but realistically, we are a Mediterranean climate. If you look at the map, it gives you a good idea of kind of where we fall. What it does for us is it means that we have one precipitation season a year. We usually have the winter precipitation season into early spring, leaving the rest of the year hot and dry, which we've been experiencing lately along with these fires, is that we're still waiting for the precipitation season. It's part of our climate and part of why the original plants here are adapted to that particular climate. And when you go into a nursery, you often see conflicting tags on them. They are, you know, is it a California native? Is it a low water use? Is it all the different things that they're tagged as? And there are beautiful plants that come out of other areas that are low water use. You can get some spectacular ones out of Australia and other places like that. The difference with a California native plant is that it is set up to thrive not only on the water use cycle of where you live, which is likely a lower water use, but also with the soils that are there, the patterns of birds, everything else that happens in that area. So not only do you save water, you save on other maintenance care issues around your plants and your gardens. So when we look at what we want to do with when we're choosing plants for a landscape, often the first things we think about are how beautiful they are and how we want them to look, but there's so much more to what they do for us. They bring in wildlife, they support pollinators, they help with soil, they can provide food. So really good plant choice gives you not only beautiful plants, but it gives you this better, healthier, stronger environment around them as well. One of the best ways to do that is to convert sterile lawn type look to a native plant garden, which can be almost any look that you can dream of. Native gardens, as I was saying, beyond saving water up to 83% over a standard lawn setup, they also require less maintenance and give you, because of that, less green waste. You're going to be pruning instead of shearing. You're going to be deadheading instead of mowing. So it saves time, money, energy, and everything going into your waste bin. One of the best thing it does for you is that it reduces some of the harmful runoff. You no longer need the chemical additives to create a lusher green look. It can happen naturally. So you don't need the pesticides, the herbicides, the additives that would normally go onto it. And it keeps it less chemical input for you, your pets, your family, your neighborhood, and for the waterways around you. And you support local pollinators. We've all heard more about how we need to support the bees, how important it is to have a good bee environment. In general, it is really important to have our pollinators around. They're part of what keep the plants healthy, but having the plants keeps them healthy. And without the pollinators, we all know there wouldn't be a whole lot for us in a fairly short amount of time. And planting natives for that area is probably the best way to have that symbiotic relationship. And your local wildlife. Native plants are the foundation to the ecosystem for why we have birds coming through on these flyways, for why we have butterflies and bees coming through. So the native plants depend on these animals, and the animals depend on the native plants. So the ones that you choose for your yard really make a difference in these highly urbanized regions. change to the next one, Kristen?
Yeah, I was looking for the second poll. And I'm not seeing it. Oh, wait, poll. Oh, here we go. So we're just kind of curious. We're talking about biodiversity and how plants provide, native plants provide a lot of food and shelter for other birds and butterflies. And we're wondering, how many butterflies and moths do you think an oak tree supports? Just go ahead and put your answer in there.
I admit, yesterday I got this wrong. So as much as we study, there's always so much more fascinating things to learn.
And they're coming in. We're getting lots of answers here. Everyone's. And let's see. It looks like we'll just give you another couple seconds. Take your guess. And we're going to end the poll. And we're going to share the results. And for those of you who guessed, oh, I'm not going to tell you. That's right. That's the next slide. Okay.
All right.
Okay, so we have a lead at 250, close behind 150, and then 50 and 10. So you're thinking that an oak tree maybe supports a lot of life. Let's take a look.
Right. So nice job a lot. Most of you guessed, the majority guessed 250 species supported by native oak, and you are correct. These two lists show commonly used plants you find in your neighborhood compared to some common native plants. In my garden, I have kind of the commonly used plants. I have the agapanthus and calla lily and English ivy. Unfortunately, these plants provide very little support to local pollinators. So what I did, since I'm a renter, I planted some of the natives from the list on the right in pots. And going down the list, I planted aster, penstemon, and sunflower with immediate results. Meaning I spend half of my quarantine work meetings keeping an eye on the new blooms and their many visitors, mostly butterflies and bumblebees, which is kind of nice.
That's for you, Emery.
So biodiversity is one of those terms that we throw around. And what do we mean when we talk about biodiversity? We're talking about the whole variety of not only animals, but plants on our earth, and supporting them in a way that is a positive for our habitat and our environment is what we're looking for when we talk about plants and biodiversity. And California is a pretty incredible place for a whole variety of reasons. But one of the best is our variety of plant life that is found nowhere else. 1/3 of the plants in California are found no place else on our planet. They only happen here, and of those, even with 70% of our habitat gone, for a whole variety of reasons, you can see that as we get into the dark blues and greens in California, how rich the biodiversity is here. How many plants and animals only happen in California. And this web of biodiversity is a little bit like this spider web. There's no way to pluck at any particular piece of it without impacting the entire system. So when you get rid of a plant, you impact the animals that were reliant on that. It changes the conditions of the other plants around them. It can impact the soil. So everything in there is connected in our ecosystem. And we've got a whole variety of these type of local ecosystems in spay regions. We have the chaparral, where you get the hillsides covered in these hard woody areas. And the coastal sage scrub, which also hard and woody, but takes a lot more moisture and a lot higher winds. You get a little bit more color with them as we get out towards the bay itself. and the Valley Oak Savanna. I mean, we have Oakland of all things, where we used to have, as we talked about, the huge biodiversity that oaks bring. The hillsides used to be covered in oaks. So the original area here, parts of it were Valley Oak savannas. And then the grasslands, where you get these super blooms, you know, the Instagram background type areas where you can have these beautiful grasslands that come into bloom throughout the year that we have on some of our hillsides. And our mixed conifer forests. We have beautiful forests in the Bay region where we get redwoods, we get oaks, we get pines. This picture is actually my front yard normally. So we are a very lucky area that we have a lot of different mixed vegetation regions. And knowing which region you're in, what habitat was originally there is one of the best ways to identify your microclimate, to understand what's happening with your soil, what happens, what pollinators you see in your area. So going out and looking at the wilderness around where you are, or the undeveloped lands, is one of the best ways to know what plants were originally there and what type of plants might do well where you're at.
So we're just going to take a minute here to look at some questions. Oh, are the poll results still blocking the screen? That seems to be, is anyone else?
They aren't on mine.
It's not on yours.
I'm not sure.
Okay, so it sounds like the poll results have been closed.
Okay.
You can select close. No, after you hit the close button. Oh, shoot. Oh, okay. Let me see. Stop sharing. Oh, there we go. I think I figured it out. Thank you, everyone. Okay, can overwatering kill natives is the question.
Now, overwatering can kill any plant. We'll go into a little bit in a bit on how to group them by watering types, but any type of plant can be killed with too much or too little water for its type.
Let's see. I'm not seeing many other questions on what native plants can grow under and around redwood trees, pine trees, and oak trees?
Well, the redwoods have a little bit of an acidic place under them, so they do really well with sorrel, with ferns, with miner's lettuce is a really good one. It's pretty much the things that would grow under a native redwood forest. If you go up to Redwood Park or things like that in the parts that aren't developed, you can get a really good look at which ones grow under there. But sorrel is one of the best ground covers to grow under redwoods.
A number of you are asking about where to get a list for native plants in the area, and we are going to be reviewing that. How can we get rid of ivy?
Ooh.
That's a good question for Anne Marie.
Ivy is the current bugaboo devil thing in my yard in Oakland. It is English ivy, and I'm using sheet mulching to get rid of it. I've cut it back and I am layering and overlayering it with sheet mulching until I deprive it of everything that it wants to grow. It's a little bit harder because it is coming in from a neighbor's yard where I'm at. So it's going to be an ongoing project unless I can convince them to kill theirs off too.
Great. And a lot of your questions about plant lists, we are going to cover in depth in just a minute. So we are going to move on now.
All All right, so what things should you consider when you are choosing these new plants and how you're going to put them in to your spaces? One of them I just mentioned with the ivy question, but is if you're converting lawn or if there is something else that like ivy that you're going to be converting that area, sheet mulching is a great way to do it. And there's a lot of information out on sheet mulching. It is basically a way of layering cardboard and mulch along with water, wetting it down, and then topping it with, or cardboard and compost, and then topping it with mulch. It's a little bit like a lasagna recipe in that every place you look will have a variation of the same layers, and pretty much as long as you put them together, they will work in converting whatever's happening. It's the quickest, easiest way to convert your lawn without either the backbreaking labor or adding it to your waste bins. And it feeds the soil as well and gives you a really good place to plant. And what's soil got to do with it? And the answer is everything. Knowing what your soil is will know how well plants can do there, what type of irrigation you're going to need if you're going to do supplemental irrigation. And there are a couple easy ways to figure out your soil, either literally taking a handful of it, making it into, you know, a rope kind of thing. Is it very clay-like? Could you make pots out of it? Is it just sand that falls apart? Learning what type it is, or digging a hole and kind of filling it, letting it drain, refilling it, and kind of timing to get a concept of how long it takes your soil to drain will give you an idea of what kind of plants will thrive there. And choosing natives. Planting natives, they do best in our rainy season. So coming into fall through early spring is the best time to plant them. You want to dig a hole that's twice as wide and half again as deep as the plant itself to give them plenty of space, and to put, like you can see in the top plant here where they're putting a little bit of a well around it to kind of let everything slow and sink in. And mulch, topping it with mulch, not leaving bare soil in most of the yard is a really good way to conserve the water that's in the soil, but leaving a bit of it free for our native bees. California has 1,600 types of native bees. The vast majority of them aren't the bees that we think of. They're not the Winnie the Pooh bees. These are singular ground dwelling bees. So mulch is a good part on most of your yard, but leave areas mulch free to allow those pollinators to have spaces where they can come in and do the work helping to support your garden. And watering. A lot of California natives, if you're using the ones for your area, are developed for that area, but you'll want some supplemental irrigation to get them started or during really hot or dry air times. And remember that what you're doing is you're providing the water through the soil. You're getting it into the soil as if and near the plant so they can pull it out like they do from precipitation. And when you're gardening for the pollinators to help them support your plants, they like having a lot of different color. They like having different colors, different shapes, different heights to pull in different types of pollinators, which can give you a really beautiful, colorful landscape. Grouping them large swaths of flowers together so that as they're flying over, they can see the color, it'll draw them in. Having different seasons of blooms is an important part for the pollinator and for having an attractive yard. So attracting butterflies and moths, they want flatter spaces to land on. They want plants that will open up and give them a place to alight. They are often, you'll see they have a symbiotic relationship with butterfly or with ants, but they also are often one of very few pollinators for that plant. So it's really important with the plants that you have to attract the pollinators that go with them. So having multiple of that so that they can see them from afar and come in is very important. And hummingbirds. Right outside of one of our office windows, we have this tree that the hummingbirds love, and it's like having our own, wildlife show right outside of the window there. the tubular flowers, they like the bright colors. And in return, they're going to support you by eating the insects and particularly the mosquitoes that none of us want around anyways. So if you support them, they will make it a nicer place for you to be too. And birds. We're on the Pacific Flyway and we get an amazing variety of birds. Lake Merritt was even, I believe it was the oldest wildlife sanctuary in our country, partially because of the amount of birds that it supports. So they want plants that have seeds, berries, nesting materials. They need a water source, if you can put it out there. And they'll also help to eat all of the insects and help to keep your yard a little bit nicer to hang out in. And our bees. You know, the 1,600 types of bees in California that are native here, 47 types of bumblebee species. What we can do is to provide those bare areas for them, but to provide plants that flower year round and give them a little bit of pop of color so that they can see which ones they want to come and visit. So here, as you're considering which plants you want for your yard, some tips for laying it out. One of the best things to do is to kind of draw out your yard and understand the spaces you have. Take a look at where you have sun, where you have shade, where you want to add shade, how the water flows across your land. It's not only a good idea, it's the law to keep all water on your landscape, keep it all on your property. So think about that as if you want to contour your yard, what areas hold water for longer, and that'll help you know which type of plants you want to put in different areas. It's also nice to group them, to have multiples of the same type of plant together. And if you put them in odd numbers, it makes it a little bit easier. The eye doesn't try to always put them into patterns then in quite the same way. And so if they grow a little bit off, our eyes aren't going to find it as strange. And when you're looking at planting this out, plan it for the full size of the plant that when it's grown. So plan around whether it will be 2 feet across or 3 feet across, or how large you need it to be so that they're not overcrowded and you're not having to do as much work long-term with taking things out. And don't forget the understories under trees. They like shade-loving areas, and you've got to understand that the ones that go under the tree have to have the same water needs as the tree. Like oaks do not like to be watered in the summer. So whatever goes under there needs to not need summer water.
Jessica?
Sorry, I was lulled into just passive mode. So here's an illustration of hydrozoning. Planting low water plants with those that require more water is wasteful, but also causes stress on one of the plants. And I saw in the question, somebody asked if you can overwater native plants. And you can. Most of our native plants, you want to only water them when the soil is completely dry or mostly dry. So hydrozoning helps avoid overstressing those plants. And it's fairly intuitive. You want to group them, you look at the microclimates in your garden where it's full sun or shade or part shade, and then group plants together, and that will make your irrigation much more efficient. Another tip I like to give is to mix annuals for instant color, but rely on perennials. I've been going on a lot of social distancing walks in the last few months, and I was admiring a field, or actually a street median with California native annuals. And in March, you can see poppies and lupins blooming, and a few months later in June, there's a shift towards drier conditions. A lot of those have dried out, and there's some late bloomers, like California clarkia and mallows. So while annuals are a great choice for instant color and gratification, especially for new gardeners, but since they change so dramatically throughout the seasons, it's best to include perennials that will provide a fixed year-round greenery and texture as a backbone to your garden design.
Okay, we were gonna take a few questions. One is on sheet mulching. After laying cardboard on a dying lawn, wetting the cardboard and putting mulch on the top of the cardboard, how will plants thrive without providing fresh soil?
So you are layering the cardboard in the water with compost and adding mulch on the top. And you can actually plant directly into that. The compost will help to feed the plants, and the cardboard will dissolve and help to feed the soil. So you will eventually be planting in a way that the roots will go directly into the soil. And you can plant up to 1 gallon plants in that way. Above that, you want to cut an X kind of into the cardboard layers, pull them back, and have it either be a hole or have sheet mulched around them to begin with.
What should we do when we have a mature garden filled with things non-native like agapanthus?
It depends on what the goal is. If the goal is to change out to a native garden, you can slowly change them out, kind of area by area, or just add in native plants among your current garden. Adding in some of them will still provide some of the benefits to the wildlife, soil, all of the pieces that we've been talking about.
Are there native plants that deer do not like to eat?
That's a tougher one. Deer are kind of a weedy species in that way. They like a lot of things. It kind of depends on where you're at. You want things that are a little bit hardier, a little bit of a woodier one, to see if they can not eat the entire thing. I know that ones where they can eat just the tops off, they'll go through pretty quickly. They've also run their way through my apple trees and my food garden, so that wasn't my best choice.
Yeah, on the deer topic, a lot of our local nurseries do kind of have some plants that they'll kind of promote the deer resistant ones, and that's a good start. But a lot of deer will just eat anything that's young too. So finding a way to protect your young plants from the deer might be a worthy investment.
I'm not sure if you guys know the answer to this, but it's an interesting question. I'm raising bees. Are buckeye trees toxic to them?
I don't know that answer, but my email will be at the end, and if you write me about it, I can find out the answer.
Lots of good questions here. Do native plants do well in garden boxes or better in the ground?
They can thrive in either. They can be potted plants on a balcony just as well as they can be a full landscape or a garden.
This is another question about sheet mulching. How many inches of compost should be added on the top of the cardboard? Inches of compost. I
suggest at least 3. And I think that the Model Water Efficient Landscape Ordinance suggests that landscapes have 3 as well. There's a great website, Lawn to Garden, and they have videos on sheet mulching. We'll send that as part of the links for more information on sheet mulching. We're going to go more into plant resources, so we're going to continue on. I think we'll be answering some of your questions about plant resources.
All right, so finding plants for your garden. One of the simple things you can start with is just going on a walk in your neighborhood and keeping a close eye out for what you like and also what seems to be doing well. A lot of, now you can take a photo of almost any flower and find out what it is online using different apps. Or old school, you could just take a photo and take it to a nursery to help get that plant ID'd. We also have on our website lists to different plant tours and demonstration gardens. One popular tour every year is Bringing Back the Natives, and this year it went virtual. So you can find recordings for dozens of gardens and from different nurseries, local nurseries, on their website. We also have a sustainable garden map on our website that shows examples of gardens with plants that are suitable for our climate. And personally, I love visiting the botanical gardens, the UC Botanical Garden and the Tilden Botanical Garden, which are open with reservation right now because all those plants are labeled. So you can see what you like and kind of take some information home. We also have several really valuable free design resources on our plant page. For instance, this is the next one is the California Native Plant Society Native Landscape Planting Guide for the East Bay, and it can help you get through the barrier of creating a design. It includes a plant list, a plant design for each of these 5 easy project ideas, homey habitat, colorful entry, wildlife walkway, pollinator park, and living wall. And it helps you, it gives you options and shows you where to lay out the plants. Another great resource is these landscape design templates provided by the Saving Water Partnership out of Santa Rosa, which is part of their fire recovery effort to streamline the process of putting in new gardens. It includes 6 professionally designed water efficient options for various yard layouts, and each meets the model efficiency water requirement ordinance and includes the concept plan, architectural renderings, and different layout options, plant lists, and plant lists with photos, which is kind of a nice bonus. We also have, this is a great resource for folks who live in HOAs, even if they're outside of San Lorenzo, because it provides, it's a booklet that was created by UC students, our architecture school, and it provides designs for different layouts, like a cul-de-sac garden or a mirrored garden, and it can help you get a project planned and approved and implemented with your HOA, because it provides all the information in one place. We have even more resources, and all of them are on our website. On the right, I have a picture of the East Bay Mud plant book for summer dry climates. It has beautiful pictures and more information on the plant communities that we've just discussed and examples of them in gardens. We also have the EBMed Low Water Use Plant List, which was created by our local Landscape Advisory Committee by cross-referencing dozens of low water plant lists and selecting the best performers and favorites for our area. Our fire escaping booklet is especially relevant if you live near a wild area. It gives advice and information on minimizing your fire risk. And finally, we have several plant search databases linked, including WUCLs, which is a plant database that gives you the water requirements of most plants that are available in nurseries, and CalScape, which is an amazing resource that you guys will, based on these questions, we already have questions that CalScape can answer, and Anne-Marie is going to dive into this now. It's a database created by the California Native Plant Society.
CalScape is a really useful tool. I'm going to go ahead and change to the screen showing it real quick, just so we can run through a couple of features, and then we'll come back to the presentation. So this is CalScape with all of its nearly 8,000 native plants. You can put in exactly where you are or your city, and it will give you the ones for those, but you can go even further and go into an advanced search. And let's say I want a specific address in a specific town. And I want it to have, so here are all 763 plants for that area that would be native to that region. I can also choose to go in and add, I want it to have partial shade. I've got a medium drainage. I want low or extremely low or very low water use. I want it to be almost no care. You can put in, you know, a butterfly garden, a bee garden, hummingbird gardens, deer resistant, as we had somebody ask. You can ask if it's fragrant, you can choose colors, you can choose flowering season, height. So you have an option to really look at a lot of different features here and get a really specific list for your area. So if we go to this and search, we're down to 53 plants. If you choose any of these plants, you can go into the plant, you can look at various photos of it, You can understand the description of how big it's going to be, what it's going to need and to do well. You can figure out what type of climate, site types. You can print a plant sign, print plant labels. If you are signed into CalScape, which is just signing into a database, you can add it to a plant list and keep your own plant lists. But you can also go to the nurseries that say they are carrying that plant. So if we're going to be in the Bay Area, we can look at all the different nurseries right around here that are going to carry that plant. Bay Native says that they're carrying that plant. So it gives you a way to also source the plants that you're looking for. So CalScape's it also has a way to keep your plant list, look at different nurseries, look at planting guides. So I'm going to stop sharing so that Kristen can go back to the presentation.
So as you can see, that is an awesome tool. And I think many of the questions that were coming up, you can search for on this database, and you get all these beautiful colors. And did you want to talk about what's coming up with the Design Wizard?
We are hopefully pretty soon going to be debuting the CalScape Garden Planning Wizard, which will take all those factors and your location, and then you can tell it you like a natural type look, or you prefer, you know, an outdoor active entertainment space, and it will give you something like this, a design for your yard, and then you can match up the lists. You know, you'll have 3 or 4 different types of shrubs or different perennials, ground covers for your area, and then you can put your list together and take that with you to your nursery, or if you were working with a landscape company, you can give it to them both for installation and for how to care for your native plants.
Finally, going to briefly touch on landscape rebates, but if there's more questions, we have more information, we can spend a little bit more time on it. EBMed offers incentives to help you implement your landscaping projects. Rebates up to $2,000 for residential properties and $15,000 for multifamily properties and HOAs. Our lawn conversion rebate helps you convert a lawn to a low water use garden, and that's based on square footage that you convert, so it's 75 cents per square foot. If you're upgrading your irrigation, we also have a sprinkler to drip conversion. We also have high efficiency nozzles and other irrigation devices. And our very popular rebate is to upgrade a standard controller to a smart weather-based controller, which takes into consideration your local climate when scheduling irrigation. Many of these models now have smartphones, and can help save water and help you kind of better manage your landscape.
I think this is our last. Okay, we're going to take a few more questions. When we plant a native, should we plant 3 of them together? When we plant a native, should we plant 3 of them together, or 5, 7, etc.?
It's one of the things that we suggest when you're doing it, both to give a swath of that type of plant, which is better design wise. It's better for pollinators to find it, but it's also, it's easier on the eye.
Okay, when will CalScape? Oh, everyone's really excited about the Design Wizard. When are you thinking that's going to come around?
It's in development right now. We are hopeful that it will be done in the next couple of months. We have the designs finished. We're in the programming stage of it.
Okay. Do you have a list of landscapers to put in native gardens to replace my lawn, Jessica?
So there's a lot of great landscapers in the Bay Area, and we have resources to how to select a landscape designer. And Bay Friendly or Rescape California maintains a list of qualified landscapers. And specifically for native plants, I don't think maybe Anne-Marie knows of other resources.
I don't have a good list at this point. We have our first native plant landscaper certification class starting in Southern California within the next few weeks. So that will be moving up here. We don't have a good list as of yet, but most California Native Plant Society chapters do have one. And there are 35 chapters throughout the state, and the Bay Area one is very active, and they may have a good list. So I would give them a call and see who they recommend for your specific area.
We did, Catherine Alexander did say, per UC, Buckeye blossoms are poisonous to bees. So that's something for everyone to look into a little bit more.
Thanks, Catherine.
Oh, sorry about that. What, Anne-Marie?
I just said thanks, Catherine. I know she's a very knowledgeable plant person in the area.
Yeah.
It's good.
I have read the rebate is not allowed if you have let your grass die. So I water everything else, just not what used to be grass. Do you know if this would be allowed?
We take a look at the past water use to verify that there was irrigated lawn at that time. So based on pictures and your irrigation pattern, I'd say if you're uncertain if it would qualify, go ahead and reach out to us directly and we'll take a look at your project. But if the grass has been dead and hasn't been maintained, it's not likely to qualify for the lawn conversion rebate, but we can still potentially, we can provide other resources to help you get started.
Is there a way to search for edible native plants? I think
I remember if that's one of our ones on Calscape. I don't think it is, but I do know that we have resources in our blogs on edibles and natives. And I do a fair amount of harvesting with miners, lettuce, and sorrel, and I've checked those resources on the CNPS website previously.
And on our rebate, we do, our rebate allows edible plants. So if you're converting a lawn, you can put in a vegetable garden or fruit trees.
I have clay-like dirt soil. Is that consistent for this type of garden, or do I need a different soil?
I think it's working with the soil that you have and feeding it. Feeding it either through compost or through sheet mulching, depending on what you're doing, but looking for plants that thrive in that type of soil.
And most of the East Bay area, except for Alameda, which is sandy, has clay type soil. So a lot of our natives are well adapted to clay soils. If it's compacted, you still want to amend it with compost and mulch.
Okay, and so most of this information that we're covering today is on ebmud.com/watersmart. So you're going to go there and then be able to find lawn rebate information and also information about plants and these resources. And we're also going to be sending you an email with these links. So with that, I think we did pretty good on the questions. I just want to review what we covered today because we actually covered quite a bit in an hour. We talked about why plant choice matters, helping to save water for our watershed and for our local communities. It improves aesthetics, and you can even inspire your neighbors. We talked about the importance of California native plants contributing to our local biodiversity, and native plants being the foundations of our diverse ecosystems. And they're adapted to our dry summers. We looked at some installation and design considerations with sheet mulching and providing food for bees and butterflies and birds and with blooms year round. We also looked at hydrozoning, so putting plants with the same water needs together. And then we reviewed some plant resources to help you find some of your own plants. and also talked about our rebates. So thank you so much for joining us today. You had excellent questions, and I want to be cognizant of our time. I also just want to let folks know, if anyone here has Contra Costa Water District water, receive water from them, they also have rebates similar to ours. We are going to be sending an evaluation, a 4-question evaluation. If you could just take really about 30 seconds to fill that out, that would be super helpful for us. And please join us next Tuesday for No Frustration Irrigation. Again, thank you so much for joining us. Everyone here at the Water Conservation Division is here to help you. And also thank you to Anne-Marie Benz for joining us today. Here is, again, Jessica and Anne-Marie's contact info and 2 websites that are going to be super handy for you for your next steps. Thank you again.
Since we have a couple minutes, we could finish answering a couple. I see a couple new questions popping up. I'm happy to stay on.
Oh. Well, I think we should just.
Okay.
Oh, what are some apps we can use for plant ID?
Mm-hmm.
There's some great apps out there for plant ID.
Yeah, one that I've been enjoying right now is Seek and iNaturalist. So you can take photos and it starts to ID it while you're just getting close to the plant.
Well, thank you, Jessica and Anne-Marie, and I think I'm going to sign off now.
Well, thank
Thank
you
you.
for
Thank you
the
for an
invitation.
awesome presentation.
And please feel free to email me with questions. I may not know the answer, but somebody will, and we can help find it.
Yes, please contact Jessica, Anne-Marie, and we will dig into it. I'm going to be signing off. Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.